host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Happy Tuesday. It is time for the first 2024 presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube and Rockfin. I had difficulty with Rumble earlier. I hope they get that worked out. But welcome back, guys. I am so looking forward to this. I bet you are as well. I want you guys to get comfortable, grab some popcorn, grab some tea or whatever it is that you do in the evening, and let's have some fun tonight. I think we're going to have a lot of laughs. I'm already laughing, and it hasn't even started. There is also going to be protest outside of the debate as well. So, Eric, if you see any clips about the protest on Twitter, let me know. We can always show part of those as well. I believe Status Quo is on the ground outside of the debate. They will be covering those protests. So what is up, fam? I'm going to give a couple of shout outs and then we're going to dive in because Kamala Harris did finally post a policy platform. So before this debate starts, we are actually going to make a comparison to Kamala Harris's. I'll tell you why I said that in just a second. Kamala Harris's policy platform and Jill Stein's policy platform. And you can tell me who you think is the better candidate and who has left policies a part of their platform. There has already been speculation that Kamala's platform doesn't seem to be that much different from Donald Trump's or the current platform that the Biden administration already had. We will get into all of that. But first and foremost, let's give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Welcome, fam. Thank you for keeping the lights on around me. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories here. Ultimates, Sabinators. There's also a group called Sabsters. There's Sabbies as well. And of course, don't forget about those members holding down the fort. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Raymond Passmore, Peter, just Peter, no last name, just Peter, and Mary A. Leck. Thank you guys so much and welcome. Thank you so much for becoming a Sabby patron. Really do appreciate all of your support. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and show that thumbnail, of course. Interesting night it is going to be tonight, and I hope you guys like the thumbnail. I tried to make it look as professional as possible. Tonight is the presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. You can see them both smiling there. But will they smile tonight? That is remaining to be seen. A couple of shout outs I want to give. Shout out to Tavis says, I'm not even here for the debate. I'm here for Sabby's takes. Well, I hope you're getting comfortable, Tavis, because it'll be an interesting night. Pretty sure Trump will trash talk Kamala. I'm pretty sure so too. Charlie Mack, gonna be an interesting train wreck tonight. Shout out to Raphael, who has been a Sabby member for 9 months. Sab, it is Taco Tuesday. LOL. It is. I did not have tacos tonight. I actually had I guess you can call it spaghetti and meatballs. It wasn't actually like spaghetti though. I have this protein pasta. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but it's protein pasta. So it's pasta, but it's made out of chickpeas and lentils. So it's just one of those things that you can have to substitute for regular pasta, because regular pasta has a lot of calories and all that jazz. I had that, and I had turkey meatballs instead of the regular meatballs. So that's what I had. That's what I have for dinner tonight. Shout out to David from Alien versus Predator. No matter who wins, we lose. It's a good point there. Mario says, will this be a fact check stream? We're going to fact check some things. Maybe I won't have to do much fact checking, but we will see. David said chickpea pasta is good. It was actually pretty decent. I was surprised. I was expecting it to taste just like chickpeas, but it doesn't. It really kind of just tastes like pasta. I don't know. Maybe you guys might feel differently. Maybe if you have it, you might be like, that don't taste like no pasta. I don't know. Dwayne said he had wings. All right. Wings. Yeah, man. Bad Wolf said, I made beef stew. Oh, Indigenous said you had spaghetti too. Yeah. Sebastian, whole grains are important for you. Yeah. It's interesting the things that I've tried, like since I started weight training, since I started weightlifting. It's interesting because now it's like, instead of having like white rice, I'll have like the cauliflower rice or rice that's made from like lentils because it has protein. So it's interesting the substitutions that you can make. But honestly, like long story short, it all tastes good to me. It tastes good to me. So I don't know. Marvin said, what about collard greens washed in the tub? Tastes kind of funny. What do you think? We are not making or washing any collard greens in the tub over here. No one in my family has ever put collard greens in a bathtub, and that's gross. I don't know why anyone put food in their tub. Yes, Jake, quinoa is good. Yeah, that's also a good substitution for rice, by the way, you guys. It was one of those things I didn't notice until, and I'm not going to talk too long about this because we got to get to the story, but it was one of those things I didn't know until I started like weight training, that rice has a lot of calories. And for the longest time, I used to think that I was being healthy by having rice with my meal instead of potatoes, but rice still has a lot of calories as well. Even when it comes to potatoes, you're better off substituting sweet potato because sweet potato is really good for you. Root vegetable, right? Yeah. And no, Skylar, y'all don't wash your collard with bacon in the tub. Oh boy. Oh my God. The jokes are already coming in. Kia says, you better thank a union member. Can you start it? Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So before the debate, I do want to make a comparison between Kamala Harris's new platform and Jill Stein's platform. I went through Kamala's platform. I'd already seen Jill's before, and we've gone over that on the show. But some people are calling foul play. Foul play. Let's dive into that. Tamanisha comes in with the bam. Harris has released an issues section on her website. And noticeably, Harris's policies aren't that distinct from Trump's. These comparisons for readers to make are easy since she links the 2025 agenda under each issue area that are mostly copied and pasted from Biden's website. So that was something I noticed when I was going through this. I'm like, why does this sound familiar to me? I'm like, didn't I see this already? Yeah, just copying and pasting from Biden's, website that he had. Tamanisha goes on to say the same tough on borders nonsense, same tough on crime, fund police and give them training nonsense, positions Israel as the U.S. only ally against China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran, and will give people $25K greater than 3% for home down payments as the housing market is trash. Notably, the majority of the issues read as rhetoric since none of these alleged policy responses that Harris will have are actually drafted ones, except the one on immigration. Since it's the same bipartisan bill Democrats have been saying they will pass for almost a decade now. It's a bloated site to say the campaign has posted issues, but that's it. The only real policies listed are Republican or bipartisan ones, since Democrats pretend there's a distinction between the two parties. This is laughable and reads how the majority of issues do. So I'm going to show you myself. Let's get into this platform that Kamala Harris now has. So we're going to start off here with build an opportunity economy and lower costs for families. So check this out, fam. Watch this. Cut taxes for middle class families. All right. So let's dive into this part here. I want to go into what she plans to do. Unlike Donald Trump, Harris and Governor Walz are committed to ensuring no one earning less than $400,000 a year will pay more in taxes. They believe that we need to chart a new way forward by both making our tax system fair and prioritizing investment and innovation. They will ensure the wealthiest Americans and the largest corporations pay their fair share so we can take action to build up the middle class while reducing the deficit. This includes, check this out, y'all. This includes rolling back Trump's tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. So I have a question. Why wasn't that done already under the Biden-Harris administration? A while back, I told you guys that Joe Biden continued some of Donald Trump's tax policies. Why wasn't this already done? Let's continue. They're talking about adding a billionaire minimum tax, quadrupling the tax on stock buybacks, and other reforms to ensure the very wealthy are playing by the same rules as the middle class. Under her plan, the tax rate on long-term capital gains for those earning $1 million or more a year or more will be 28%, because when the government encourages investment, it leads to broad-based economic growth, et cetera, et cetera. So again, something that could have already happened under the Biden-Harris administration. That's the thing that's funny about this, is that people are actually pretending like Kamala Harris is not a part of the current administration, and she is. And for those who sit up there and tell me, well, she's vice president, so it's not like she can make these decisions, you're going to see in some of these other policies, she already has implemented and made some decisions. I can also point to someone like Dick Cheney, who was probably one of the most powerful vice presidents, as long as I can remember, who made quite a bit of decisions. So don't fall for that. Now, let's go to this one here. Make rent more affordable and home ownership more attainable. So this goes into her plan to help people be able to purchase homes. So she talks about building more homes. She says they want to build 3 million more rental units and homes that are affordable to end the national housing supply crisis in her first term. And she will cut the red tape to make sure we're building more housing faster and penalize firms that hoard available homes to drive up prices for local home buyers. Okay, so we need to start dropping names. One of those companies is BlackRock. And we all know that Kamala Harris has former BlackRock executives that she has brought on to participate, to be a part of her team. So is she really going to push back against those people since she brought them on? I don't think so. I don't think so. Now, let's get to the 25,000. As more new homes are built and affordable housing supply increases, Vice President Harris will provide first-time home buyers with up to $25,000 for their down payments, with more generous support for first-generation homeowners. Anybody notice that this rhetoric has changed twice now? So when she first announced this, she said it will be $25,000 towards a down payment if you're a first-time home buyer or first-generation home buyer, right? Then she had to come back and correct that, and she stated that it's actually going to be a $25,000 tax credit. Now they're saying it's up to $25,000. How did it go from $25,000 to no, it's a $25,000 tax credit to no, it's up to $25,000 for a down payment? Anybody noticing this? They already like changing things, changing the plan, changing the rhetoric. Like, what do you mean? Make up your mind. Do you trust this? Then there's the question of first-time home buyers and first-generation home buyers. And I said before, when we talk about having an agenda that is actually going to benefit Black voters as well, because again, like I said, Black voters are often overlooked by politicians when they're thinking of policy platform. I'm thinking about all the Black people that lost their homes during the 2008 housing crisis. Those are people that were home owners. So they wouldn't qualify under this program because they wouldn't be a first generation homeowner and they wouldn't be a first time homeowner. Does that make sense? So why are we not putting something in place to help those people that were preyed on by predatory lenders and lost their homes, and Barack Obama chose to bail out Wall Street instead of those people. Why isn't there anything to help them? We're talking about generational wealth that was just wiped out. And I said before, when you look at the Black community, we lost a lot of wealth under Barack Obama's presidency because of his economic policies. Now, that's not an opinion. That's something that you can look up the data for and see it for yourself. And we have to be honest about that. What do you mean by first generation? Because I was a first-time home buyer, right? And first-generation home buyer? No, because my parents were home buyers. So some people are also asking, does that include people who have migrated to the country? Would they fall under that? I don't know. We don't know. But you're noticing that they're already starting to change the language, right? Check out this one. Grow small businesses and invest in entrepreneurs, which I think that's a good idea. Yes, I'm all for people growing small businesses. A lot of small businesses closed during the pandemic, particularly in Boston. A lot of the businesses that closed here during the pandemic were Black businesses. That's just a reality. Now, she goes on to say, as part of the opportunity economy agenda, their plan is to help small businesses and entrepreneurs innovate and grow. It says she has an ambitious goal of 25 million new business applications by the end of the first term, over 10 million more than Trump saw during his term. To help achieve this, she will expand the startup expense tax deduction for new businesses from $5,000 to $50,000 and take on the everyday obstacles and red tape that can make it harder to grow a small business. So one of those things that I think can help people start a small business is if they don't have to pay taxes on it for the first 10 years. And honestly, I've spoken to people in person who own small businesses, and I asked them, like, we talked to people at the nail salon, okay? How do you guys do this? I asked this years ago. How do you do this? Like, how do you get to open a nail salon? Like, if you immigrated here and you're able to how do you do this? And you know what I was told? I was told by the owner of that nail salon that because he immigrated to the US, he didn't have to pay taxes on the business for the first 10 years. Okay. I say, let everybody do that. Give it to everybody. Let everybody have that and see how many small businesses grow, right? Here's another one. Take on bad actors and bring down costs. So it goes over what she did as attorney general, and she says she went after the big banks. Of course, it leaves out that she did not prosecute Steve Mnuchin, and she didn't prosecute him because he donated money to her campaign. So just think about that, right? But it goes on to say here, they want to go after corporations that jack up prices and undermine the competition that allows all businesses to thrive while keeping prices low for consumers. She will go after bad actors who exploit an emergency to rip off consumers by calling for the first ever federal ban on corporate price gouging on food and groceries, which will build on the anti-price gouging statutes already in place in 37 states. Now, I know a lot of people have been pushing back on, banning corporate price gouging, but this has been done before, maybe not to this extent, but under President Nixon, he put a ban on price gouging. Now, I'm going to warn you, if you look up articles about this, they're going to say, was this a good idea? Because it actually hurt the economy. It caused a lot of inflation. I'll have to honestly have a conversation with an economist about that. But it has been done before. So a lot of people are pushing back and they're like, no, nobody's done this. Yes, Richard Nixon did do this. So just keep that in mind. However, does that fix the overall problem? No, because the overall problem is capitalism. We live in a capitalist society. You wouldn't have to put a federal ban on these corporations and these companies if we didn't live in this capitalist society. And even if you put the ban on them, they'll try to find a way to get that money back in other ways. And my question is, what else will they do in return to try to make that money? So we're talking about a huge economic situation here. I think Professor Richard Wolff will probably have a better way to fix this problem because he's really big on, prices and the economy, et cetera. But That's one of the things that she has listed as well. It also mentions that she's going to take on big pharma to lower drug prices and cap insulin costs, not just for seniors, but for all Americans. So under the Biden-Harris administration, they have done this, but it's for seniors. So they want to do it for everyone. However, does this fix the overall problem of the healthcare system in this country? No, it doesn't. You know what would fix that? Universal healthcare. The reality is, if you reduce, you cut the cost of the drug prices, et cetera, that's good. But the reality is those pharmaceutical companies will find a way to make that money in other means, whether it's increasing the price on other forms of medicine or whatever, whether they're increasing like the insurance rates, they'll find a way to get that money back. So the best thing that you can do, and to make sure that everyone in this country has health care, is a universal healthcare system. If we want to really go for the jugular here, I would say something similar to what they have in the UK, a national healthcare system where you don't have to worry about that. When you go to the doctor, you don't have to worry. If you have a baby, raise your hand in the chat if you've had a baby. If you had a baby, you went into labor in a hospital in the United States, put the number 1 in the chat. You know how much it costs to physically have a baby in a hospital here in the United States? So that's another thing. It's just all these people, they're like, we need to have more babies. People aren't having kids. We got to have more babies. People aren't having kids. Yeah, you're going to pay these hospital bills? I see a lot of people putting up number 1s in the chat. So just think about that. Okay, so that's the ultimate thing. I think they're putting a Band-Aid on the situation, strengthening and bringing down the cost of healthcare. So this goes, it's kind of like an extension to the big pharma thing. It says she will make affordable healthcare a right, not a privilege, by expanding and strengthening the Affordable Care Act. So didn't they promise that already? Didn't the Biden-Harris administration promise they were going to do that? And then Biden won, and then all of a sudden is like, he just stopped talking about expanding Obamacare. Like, it was just kind of weird. Like, just stop talking about it. I don't know. But again, this still is not solving the root issue, because this is just putting a Band-Aid on a problem. Expanding Obamacare, yeah, that's a plus from where it is now, but everybody is still not going to have healthcare in this country. They keep trying to put Band-Aids on these wounds instead of healing the wound. You put a Band-Aid on a wound and eventually the Band-Aid gets wet. You have to take a shower. So you have to take the Band-Aid off. You have to put another Band-Aid on top of it, of that wound. Why not just heal the wound? So all of this red tape, like, this is ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous. This country has plenty of money, right? And so they can do more than this. I'm trying to go through this rather quickly. Protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. So that's something that she wants to do as well. She will ensure to fight and make sure that Americans can count on those benefits. Again, I thought Joe Biden, weren't they supposed to do this already? Like, so that's a repeat from Biden. Support American innovation and workers. So it says here that Biden and Harris helped pass the landmark legislation, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the American Rescue Plan that has supported more than 60,000 infrastructure projects. It spurred more than $900 billion in private sector investments and doubled investments in construction and new manufacturing facilities. Okay, that's all great. Now, it goes on to say here, it says, we come down here, sorry, what she plans to do, because they talk about what her and Biden did. It says that she is going to build on the administration's progress to ensure American industries and workers thrive. It says here she will continue to support American leadership in semiconductors, clean energy, AI, and other cutting edge industries in the future. Let's pause for a second. How is she going to be supporting clean energy? And she's already told you guys multiple times she no longer supports a ban on fracking. I'm sorry, but that's just a reality. I mean, I don't. Wait for it. You haven't seen the crazy part yet. She's going to sign landmark pro-union legislation, including the PRO Act to support workers to choose to organize and bargain, and the Public Service Freedom and Negotiate Act to make the freedom for public service workers to form unions the law of the land. Again, I'm all for unions. So I'm not against people having the ability to form a union. However, I will say, I think the end game should be worker cooperatives, because when you build a worker cooperative, you own a piece of the company. I've interviewed a number of union members on the show, and a number of times they've told me where union leadership or union management have overlooked their demands and their needs and their wants, and they have decided to just go against what the members have voted on. In fact, the railroad workers came on to talk about that. So this is why I push more for worker co-ops. Now, here's the crazy part. Check this out, fam. She'll fight to raise the minimum wage. She will fight to raise the minimum wage. Raise it to what? There's no dollar amount. I mean, even Bernie Sanders gave you the blueprint of the $15, which that's not even enough today to adjust for inflation. But even Bernie Sanders gave you a starting point. Okay. So raise it to what? I need dollar amounts, honey. You got to give me some figures. I mean, right now, what is $7.25 an hour? Something like that. I mean, you don't give me a number. They could raise it to $8.50 an hour. So what do you want? What? Okay. It's vague. It's vague. Let's go on. Provide a pathway to the middle class through quality and affordable education. So she says she's going to fight to help parents to afford high quality childcare and preschool for their children. Strengthen public education and training as a pathway to the middle class. And she'll continue working to end unreasonable burden of student loan debt and fight to make higher education more affordable so that college can be a ticket to the middle class. Again, notice this middle class. There's a lot of focus on the middle class. And I told you that's where they seem to be investing their energy, right? What about people who are part of the working poor? What about people who are, living in poverty? So it seems like these people are just overlooked multiple times. So some of these things, to date, it says that she helped deliver the largest investment in public education in American history, provided nearly $170 billion in student debt relief for almost 5 million borrowers, and deliver record investments for HBCUs, tribal colleges, Hispanic serving institutions, and other minority serving institutions. And then it goes on to talk about increasing the maximum for the Pell Grant Award by $900, et cetera. Again, those aren't bad things. However, it's a Band-Aid. So what could be done here? Number one, when we talk about education, we need to make sure we're talking about K through 12 as well. And we're talking about the public school education. One of the things that needs to go, you got to stop using property taxes to fund and resource public schools in this country for K through 12. People shouldn't have a cheapened education because of their zip code, because kids can't help where they are born. And it does happen. I've worked in the education system for over a decade. I see the difference between a school that's in Newton, Massachusetts, and a school that's in Roxbury. This is all based on property taxes. So we need to talk about that. Education needs to be equal across the board. So there's that. The other thing I want to bring up, it's great that she was able to get money invested into HBCUs and all these different colleges, et cetera. But the reality is, at the end of the day, if there isn't any restriction put on these universities, stopping them from increasing the tuition to a point where people just can't afford it anymore, those universities will continue to increase tuition. And the more they do that, the more student loans people are going to have to take out to attend those colleges. So you got to hit the colleges in the pocket. And I've been saying this for a long time. I'm pretty sure some of the faculty members I worked with would not like to hear me say this, but it's the reality. These colleges are a business. They're going to find a way to make that money somehow. So just keep that in mind. So if you don't put a restriction on the universities, people are still going to have to take out a lot of student loan debt. So we need to have these real conversations here. Invest in affordable childcare and long-term care. We need to have universal childcare in this country. Again, it says she's going to fight to lower the cost. And what does that mean? Lower it by how much? If you live in Boston, at one point, I've double checked this. At one point, right before the pandemic, to send your kid to daycare in Boston, you're looking at $3,000 a month per child. Per child. My parents didn't send me to daycare. My mom was able to stay home with me until I turned 5. And then I went to kindergarten, and then my mom went back to work. I don't know anyone that can afford to do that today. Everybody I know has to have 2 incomes. So there's that. Universal. Other countries have this. Some of our allies have this. They have universal childcare. Lower energy costs and tackle the climate crisis. Now, this is a joke because it says here, she will unite Americans and tackle the climate crisis as she builds on historic work, advancing environmental justice, protecting public lands and public health, and increase resilience to climate disasters. Okay, we're not going to go into all this, but I'm going to tell you how this is bullshit. Because the reality is, she just told you guys in her interview with Dana Bash, she no longer supports a ban on fracking. Now, the Biden administration approved the drilling for the Willow Project, which is on indigenous land. So how are you going to protect those communities that are affected by environmental pollution, and you're gaslighting or basically green lighting these projects that are on indigenous land? Flint still has dirty water, boo. Flint still has dirty water. These are things that have already been done. What she's done under each one is she's put up Trump's Project 2025 agenda. Now, we've said that this is the Heritage Foundation, but they're still saying this is Trump's agenda, right? The Heritage Foundation has put out a project such and such as long as I can remember. So she's saying that basically he wants to eliminate Department of Education. He wants to get rid of Social Security, Medicare, all those types of things. So she's making the comparison between herself and for Donald Trump. Now, fundamental freedoms. Let's get into this one. Restore and protect reproductive freedoms. So she talks about here how Donald Trump picked those Supreme Court justices and they overturned Roe v. Wade, et cetera. And she's saying here that she will never allow a national abortion ban to become law. And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom nationwide, she will sign it. So this part is important, people, because I want you to understand what the president can do and what they cannot do. One thing I will say, at least they did put it here, that Congress has to pass the bill, which means that Democrats will have to retake the House and the Senate, and then it'll be brought to her desk and then she can sign it. So I will say it's good that they put that there, because I don't want people to just assume that like this is something she can just do by executive order, not with this particular situation. So there's that. And I think we all knew that she supported women's right to choose, protect civil rights and freedom. So this is about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. So she talks about that, and she says her administration will continue to protect Americans from discrimination, building on her work to secure $2 billion in funding for offices of civil rights across the federal government. Okay, what does that mean? Because I have to say this, a lot of money goes into these offices for civil rights, or, you know, let's have inclusive conversations, like all of those types of things. But that doesn't stop discrimination. That doesn't stop. Look, Tyreek Hill was just slammed to the ground by the police in Miami, Florida. And Tyreek Hill was a professional athlete. He was on his way to the game. So all this money that's going into these different offices, Office of Civil Rights and Office of, African-American Study Justice, this and all that, sending money to the NAACP, which has basically become a corporate organization protecting corporations at this point. None of this is actually helping and improving what it is like to be discriminated against in this country based on race or gender alone. So as long as you keep the current systems in place that allow that discrimination to happen, that's not going to change. People have to understand this. I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to gaslight you with this. So of course she posts Donald Trump's 2025 and talked about how he overturned Roe and he demonized LGBTQ and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Boy, I tell you, we almost done. Ensure justice and safety for all. Make sure communities are safer from gun violence and crime. So this is not that much different from Donald Trump's agenda when it comes to gun violence and crime. Both of them are pro-police, and both of them keep talking about the crime issue. So she's not that much different when it comes to this, except for the fact that it says, I think she's going to try to implement gun restrictions, more gun restrictions. It says here that she talked about what she delivered. I want to get to this. She will make sure that she fights so that Americans have the freedom to live safe from gun violence in schools, communities, and places of worship. She'll ban assault weapons and high capacity magazines, require universal background checks, and support red flag laws that keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. So listen to this, folks. Don't sleep on this. She will also continue to invest in funding law enforcement. What did I tell you? So she's going to continue. She's going to give money to the police, just like Biden gave money to the police, just like Trump gave money to the police. So when it comes to policing, both of these people, Trump and Kamala, are pro-police. Pro-police. Now, we're going to jump forward here. Immigration. Secure our borders and fix our broken immigration system. So let me just jump to what she wants to do here. As president, she will bring back the bipartisan border security bill and sign it into law. At the same time, she knows that our immigration system is broken and needs comprehensive reform that includes stronger border security and an earned pathway to citizenship. How is that any different from what Trump wants to do with the border? Kamala Harris moved to the right on the border. I'm not saying they're exactly alike. They're not exactly alike. But for the people that were calling Kamala Harris progressive, she's not progressive. Okay. All right. Let's go down here. Tackle the opioid and fentanyl crisis. I think this is another one that Donald Trump also, I think they share agreement here. It says she will sign the bipartisan border bill that will fund detection technology to intercept even more illicit drugs, and she'll keep fighting to end the opioid epidemic. So I think they agree there as well. Ensure no one is above the law. So it says here she's going to fight to ensure that no former president has immunity for crimes committed while in the White House. She will also support common sense Supreme Court reforms. So they differ there, obviously. Now, here's the last one. This is where we get into foreign policy. Hold on to your seats, honey buns. Let's just get to it. Stand with our allies, stand up to dictators, and lead the world stage. Oh, Lord, here it goes. Vice President Harris has been a tireless and effective diplomat on the world stage. So it talks about all the leaders that she met with, and I want to highlight what she wants to do here. Kamala Harris will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to protect U.S. forces and interests from Iran and Iran-backed terrorist groups. She will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself. Everybody hear that? She will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and she will always ensure that Israel has the ability to defend itself. So, having said that, for the 100th time, she is not going to restrict or ban sending weapons to Israel. Does everybody understand that? Are we all clear? We all here? So her and Donald Trump are the same when it comes to sending weapons and aid to Israel. Everybody get that? The co-founders of the Uncommitted campaign, do you get that? Can we stop it with the, can I push her left? Can we push her on this issue? Stop it. This woman is never going to go against what Israel wants. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been selected to be the nominee. Let's continue. It goes on to say here, she and President Biden are working to end the war in Gaza such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, and the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. She and President Biden are working around the clock to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire done. So the same BS that we've been hearing over and over again. And I told you again, notice how they only mention Gaza. They don't mention the West Bank. An American woman was just killed in the West Bank by the IDF. They shot her in the head. They're not mentioning the West Bank because you can't use the excuse, well, we got to let Israel steal people's homes and shoot Americans in the head because they have a right to defend itself. Hamas is not in the West Bank. Kamala Harris's policy when it comes to Israel is not going to be different than Joe Biden. Does everybody get that? Her and Donald Trump are in agreement there. So again, I'm showing you how they are alike. And then invest in America's sources of strength. That one's kind of blah, blah, blah. Same thing with support the veterans. She's going to try to, help veterans or end veteran homelessness. I call BS. Again, that could be done right now. There's a lot of homeless vets. Colin said it well. At this point, Kamala Harris was better off not putting up a policy page on her website. If she is not making herself politically stand out from Joe Biden, why even bother? Again, how many differences did you see? This is Joe Biden's campaign all over again. However, there is someone else who has a better platform. And we're not going to go through everything because I've done it before on the show. But Jill Stein, I want you to see the difference. When Jill Stein talks about the economy, let me tell you what she's going to do. Some of the things. Abolish all student debt for 43 million Americans. Increase and equalize public school funding. End the privatization of public schools. Guarantee free childcare. These are just some of the things. Guarantee lifelong free public education for all institutions of learning, including trade schools, pre-K through college, and graduate school. Everybody see that? Everybody see that? Okay. Again, we're not going to go through everything. I want you to see the difference. When we get to labor, while Kamala Harris didn't even want to put a dollar amount, Jill Stein says when it comes to minimum wage, she will pass a $25 minimum wage. And according to Professor Richard Wolff, I think it's supposed to be at least in the 30s when you adjust for inflation. Kamala won't even give you a dollar amount. You guys see the difference here? Okay. But according to people like Bakari Sellers, Jill Stein is not serious. Okay. We go on to show you here. Guaranteed livable income above poverty. Guarantee housing as a human right. Implement universal rent control. Increase federal support for worker-owned cooperatives. Where Kamala Harris stops at unions, Jill Stein accelerates to worker co-ops. There's so much you can see here. And Eric, you can put the link to this in the chat so that people can see all this stuff, because it's a lot. This is a big one too. Ban at-will employment by requiring just cause to terminate employment. Unionize all federal employees. When we get to housing, end homelessness and housing insecurity with the homes guarantee. Did you guys notice that on Kamala Harris's platform, she didn't even mention a federal jobs guarantee? That's an easy one. That's a gimme. Okay. More here. Nationally adopt housing first policies or practices here. Eliminate credit checks from rental applications. Implement universal rent control and prohibition on excessive rental deposits. I mean, these are the kind of things that are common sense. Expand HUD and U.S. Department of Agriculture. Let's get to healthcare. I'm trying to show you who the real left candidate is. Immediately implement National Improved Medicare for All as a precursor to establishing a UK-style national healthcare service. And this country has so much money. They're giving billions to Israel every year. They're giving billions to Ukraine, but they won't give everyone in this country health care. I don't want to hear how you're going to pay for it, because none of those politicians and the Pentagon don't have to sit down and give you a list of how they're going to pay to send money to Ukraine. Okay. Think about that. These are the things you could have. Cancel all medical debts. Advance reproductive rights and codify Roe v. Wade. All these types of things people need to see. Again, we're fast forwarding so we can make sure we get to the protest and then the debate here. But long, extensive stuff. She has a long, extensive details here when it comes to the pandemic and how to prepare for the next one. Things like that. Kamala not even talking about that. What is happening? When it comes to democracy, she says here, replace the exclusionary two corporate party system with an inclusive multi-party democracy through ranked choice voting and proportional representation. Implement ranked choice voting. I mean, these are things like our allies have. The UK has this. It just, we're going to school tonight. We're going to school. Abolish the Electoral College. Common sense. Common sense. Pass automatic voter registration nationwide. Eliminate all these loopholes, fam. Eliminate all these loopholes. Prisons and policing. Ban private prisons and detention centers. Abolish the death penalty. End mass incarceration and build a system centered on restorative justice. Norway has that. Things like this, So now we're going to go to social justice. And this is another thing. I told you Kamala Harris has no Black agenda. She ain't really got an agenda for an indigenous people too, but Jill does. So she says here, when it comes to the indigenous population, honor all existing treaties with indigenous nations, ensure free, prior, and informed consent for any and all activity on tribal sovereign land, which would mean not putting pipelines on indigenous sovereign land. Tim Waltz. We going all in tonight. Going all in. Establish a federal land back commission. Okay, those are some of the things for the indigenous community. And then when we get to Black Americans, reparations and the agenda to facilitate Black liberation. Kamala Harris is out there running on being a Black woman. Everybody's getting mad because people say by definition she's not a Black American. But this woman has no agenda for Black Americans, not one. Okay, so let's see what Jill has. She explains what reparations is. She talks about what the studies show. We don't need another study. We don't need any further debate on whether reparations should be paid. Makes it very clear. I'm gonna read some of these, not all. Direct all federal agencies to consider and include race and ethnicity as part of all initiatives and other programs implemented with federal dollars. Overturn the harmful Alexander v. Sandoval Supreme Court decision that currently increases the burden for or eliminates private right of action against entities that violate Title VI and other mandates contained in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Kamala does not mention this. Listen to this. Promulgate a moratorium on all proposed COP cities and in federal investments in such facilities. Kamala Harris wants to give more money to the police, and so does Donald Trump. Showing you the difference between these. On here, this one's a big one. Establish a multi-agency federal returning citizens task force to assist and provide resources for the formerly incarcerated in an effort to expedite their journey back to full citizen status, including but not limited to immediate restoration of voting rights in most cases. These things need to happen. Increased investments in programs that support Black-owned businesses. Increase investment in HBCUs and leverage the power of the federal government to force states to compensate, run, land grant HBCUs the more than the $13 billion they are owed. So you can see the difference. Now, I'm going to go to foreign policy, because I don't think I got to that one yet. Kamala Harris is out here running like a hawk when it comes to foreign policy. So let's get to peace. And I want to show you what she says here. Establish a foreign policy based on diplomacy, international law, and human rights. End existing wars, military actions, proxy wars, and secret wars. Cut military spending by 50 to 75% and ensure that there's a just transition that replaces military jobs with green new jobs. Let's fast forward to Israel. Immediately end all military aid to Israel and adopt sanctions until Israel complies with international law to put an end to decades of violence, illegal occupation, displacement, dispossession, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing. Even up here, another one about Israel. Demand an immediate ceasefire in Israel and Palestine and end to the blockade of Gaza, immediate humanitarian medical relief and release of hostages and political prisoners. Notice when Kamala Harris brought up Israel, she didn't say a damn thing about making Israel end the blockade. Kamala Harris is a candidate in an empty suit. Even Jill Stein last night, when she was pressed by Piers Morgan, took him to task.
Jill, if you got an endorsement from Dick Cheney or the Ku Klux Klan or Vladimir Putin, a public endorsement, what would your reaction be?
I would publicly reject it, but let me say, I think more important than the endorsement is the fact that the policies of Dick Cheney, his neocon approach to our foreign policy, his endless war machine, his very hostile, it's like fight first and ask questions later. I think that's the core of the problem right here, is that the Democrats have very much adopted the agenda of Dick Cheney and the Republican war machine. That is the more critical problem here than the endorsements. But yes, absolutely, I would certainly reject those endorsements.
I mean, we've got a picture.
But the real problem here is that the Democrats have really adopted the policies of the Republicans.
I want to show a picture. This is a view with a world leader. Let's take a look. It's you sitting at a table with Vladimir Putin. So if Vladimir Putin offered you an endorsement, what would you say?
I would absolutely reject it. And I was there actually at a conference in order to challenge Vladimir Putin. Unfortunately, I didn't have an opportunity to talk with him because he sat at that table for about 10 minutes before he gave a speech in Russian. There were no introductions. There were no exchanges whatsoever, no conversations. The one person I could talk with was a former German foreign minister who is sitting to my right, Willy Wimmer. But otherwise, I was not able to talk to any of the dignitaries. The guy on my left, I thought was just Putin's bodyguard. It turned out he was like his press, his chief of press or something on that. But there were absolutely no introductions. And by the way, the Senate Intelligence Committee investigated in detail whether there were any connections between myself, my campaign, and the Russian government, et cetera, and gave me a full exoneration and thanked me for my full cooperation.
Okay.
So unfortunately, that photo is used as part of the Democrats' arsenal of trying to silence their competitors.
Okay, well, you give.
Over and over again, they keep using that, but they never put up the picture of Hillary Clinton sitting right next to Vladimir Putin having a conversation with them. Again, just another way to stop Jill Stein. Jill is making waves. She is actually, or was at the Breakfast Club earlier today. So she posted this behind the scenes at the Breakfast Club, and you'll see there's Jill there. There's Charlemagne the God. So she is making the rounds, which is really great. I also want to show this as well. Quick update on a poll. A new swing state poll by Cato of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania is live, surveying a wide range of foreign policy issues. Short breakdown about the Middle East. And this is the one I want to show you here. An overwhelming majority in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan support an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Wisconsin is 80%, Pennsylvania 75%, Michigan 74%. Partisan breakdown. You can see here in Wisconsin, Republicans and Democrats and independents support it. More Democrats than Republicans. But don't you guys see what's happening here? You have Democrats, Republicans, and independents supporting, the majority supporting a ceasefire immediately. in Gaza. And neither one of these candidates are listening to the American people. Neither one. I believe there are protests happening outside. Whenever you're ready, Eric, we can bring up the protests. Protests outside of the debate for people who, again, are asking for an immediate ceasefire. Like, this administration has been dragging their feet on purpose. They never really intended to have anything done or to punish Israel. The whole idea was that they thought the American people wouldn't even take issue with this. So when the protests started, they didn't know how to respond. They're like, whoa, what is happening here? Shout out to Status Quo for this one. They are covering this. I'm just going to show a little bit here on the ground outside. Here we go.
Viva Palestina! Viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina! Basta, basta Israel! Lucha, lucha Palestina! Lucha, lucha Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina! Viva!
Okay, so again, outside of the debate, shout out to Status Quo for being there on the ground. I think we should be able to start to go into in just a second. Eric, when we clip this, we'll clip the one section that I just did about comparing Kamala and Jill. We'll do that as a separate clip. And then we'll do different parts. We'll clip different parts of the debate. I'll explain this later, depending on the conversation. We have a 2-minute countdown to the debate. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And listen, folks, I'm not going to be with you when you go to vote in the voting booth. I'm not. It's just reality. However, I know that I'm going to be supporting Jill Stein because Jill Stein has earned my vote. I will be voting for the anti-genocide, pro-worker candidate. And the reality is, at the end of the day, you have Kamala Harris and you have Donald Trump. Both of them are horrible on Israel. Both of them still want to, shake hands and hang out with Netanyahu and his crazy ass administration and give Israel the green light to do whatever they want to do. And then there is this conversation about the Ben Gurion Canal. We're going to talk about this on Thursday because whoever becomes president, they will be that push for them to continue, sign off on that Ben Gurion Canal. And that's something I haven't really dove into yet, but we're going to talk about that more on Thursday because that is important. Can we go in now, Eric? All right, let's bring it in. All right, so going into the 2024 presidential debate, let's see what the pundits have to say.
That handshake, but what we are going to see is a spirited debate and perhaps the most consequential general election debate we have ever seen because almost certainly going to be the last one. So with the stakes so high, the presidential debate just moments away, we have the entire news division keeping an eye on everything. We are going to be fact-checking on our live blog. It's all going to be happening right here. The debate now just 10 seconds away, and we will be back with our post-game show as soon as it's over. We are going to toss it right now to David Muir and Lindsay Day.
Tonight, the high-stakes showdown here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election, their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special. The most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face. Historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. It's up for debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here.
Oh, damn. So I didn't realize either Donald Trump is really tall or Kamala Harris is shorter than I realized. Interesting.
Here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time. So
what's the deal with the tax cuts? And that's the thing that really gets me, the tax cuts.
That those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump.
The problem with this statement is that her and Biden continued some of Donald Trump's tax cuts. Like, she's acting like she was not a part of the current administration. You know, some people are saying maybe they should have put Gavin Newsom in instead of Kamala Harris, although he messing up California too, okay? California is a mess, boo, is a mess. But at least people wouldn't be able to point to him and say, why aren't you doing that now? Because you're part of the current administration. Oh, Lord.
I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security.
Pause for a second. I had a feeling that was going to be brought up because the reality is there was a woman here in Massachusetts that made a video that I saw earlier today complaining about the exact same thing. For people who say this is a Republican talking point, I have actually interviewed people here in the Boston area that have been affected by this, where they have been kicked out of community rec centers so that they can house migrants there. Our governor and Mayor Wu has requested help from the Biden administration because they're running out of emergency shelters. They're running out of places to put them. A lot of complaints have been made, again, not just by residents, but also by our governor and Mayor Wu of Boston. So I had a feeling he was going to bring that up. When it comes to the economy, I think the Biden administration, they're going to struggle on this one.
During this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all, in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you.
I'm sorry, but girl, yes, the economy was a mess when you and Biden, assumed your positions in the White House. That is true. We were in the pandemic. I totally understand that. However, it is now 2024, and those grocery prices, if I remember correctly, the grocery prices started to increase, and along with gas, after the war with Russia and Ukraine. So, I mean, I'm sorry, you can blame part of that on what was happening during the pandemic at that time, but that still does not explain. You didn't really debunk what he said about the job situation. You didn't debunk what he said about the unions. You didn't debunk any of those things. The economy is trash. The economy's trash. I've been telling people this for years.
Minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
I thought you just said that Project 2025 was his plan, though. Now you're saying he has no plan. I'm confused. You mentioned Goldman Sachs, and you said Goldman Sachs is saying that Trump's plan or whatever, his economic plan, would cripple the economy. But aren't you getting money from Goldman Sachs? When you announced that you were running for president, Wall Street jumped immediately, it seemed like, to donate money to you. So you're backed by the same people that you're.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chip.
Take a shot every time they say China. China, China, China. It's all about China.
From Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the...
So you guys see that? He acknowledged that she copied some of his policies. Jesus Christ.
Issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's an execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. but we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's saying the Democrats are radical. I wish the Democrats were radical. Please, let's not even go there. Jesus Christ.
Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
Why wasn't that done during the first 2 years when Democrats had the House under the Harris-Biden administration? Why didn't Congress pass that bill then? I mean, at least she's being honest about that. Congress would have to pass the bill first. But why wasn't that done?
But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to because, again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. in all fairness. J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give...
Pause here for just a second. When they say, guys, answer this for me, who you think this is, when they say that's what they wanted it back to the states. Who are they? Who's they? Who are they talking about? Because I've heard both sides of this. Some people said, yeah, I think that was the right thing to do. Some people said they didn't think it was the right thing to do. But who's the they that wanted it back to the states and, didn't want Roe v. Wade to be the law of the land? Just curious. Who's they?
Your time to respond. But I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
answer the question, would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration.
I'm sorry. I have never seen or heard of that ever happening. I've never heard or seen of that happening. To be clear, immigration coming in the hot seat.
And border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President.
Girl, I'm sorry, but the reality is this. I don't care whatever he's saying in his rallies, that has nothing to do with the fact that Biden assigned you to the border way before that border bill was even brought into conversation. So you were assigned to the border. Lester Holt from ABC News asked you in an interview if you had been to the border, and you said, no, I haven't been to the border, but I've never been to Europe. So before that bill was even a topic of discussion, you were assigned to the border. You dropped the ball. You didn't pass the assignment. It just is what it is. Just own that and move on.
Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here.
I ain't see nobody eat no dog, nobody eat no pets.
You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
television. But the people
I'm
on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain.
That's not a bragging right.
Including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Those people endorsed you because you'll continue the war in Ukraine. Let's call it what it is.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you
This is something I think a lot of Democrats don't want to hear and don't want to listen to. But I've seen this complaint come from people, residents from Chicago, New York City, and also parts of Detroit. People here in Boston as well have been complaining about this, those that were sanctuary cities. So the Democratic Party, they don't want to talk about this, but the reality is a lot of Black people in those particular communities have been complaining about this. And Kamala and Biden have pretending like this isn't even an issue at all. But when we take it back to foreign policy, we have to remember once again, what is happening in Venezuela? The U.S. government has implemented multiple coups there. They've continued to put sanctions on Venezuela, making these countries unbearable for the people who live there. A lot of people don't want to leave their home. A lot of people don't want to. Some do want to come here, and they're not just coming here. People are also going to France. People are also going to UK. They're not just coming to the U.S. So let that sink in. But we need to end the terror that the U.S. government has implemented on a lot of these foreign countries, and we need to end those damn sanctions.
No, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich. Coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
No, I'm sorry. They should have pushed back on Kamala there and told her to answer the question. Kamala Harris didn't say anything. Notice she did not refute anything that he said about the migrant situation, about the crime. She didn't refute that at all. She didn't even address it. And the moderators don't even push back on that. Think about that for a second. She's talking about we need to invest in housing and da-da-da. She didn't refute anything he said. She just said the people are tired of this playbook, but she didn't deny it. Just like she didn't deny when Dana Bash told her, well, Donald Trump said that you became Black. Notice she did not deny that either. Let's go back in.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager.
So what?
The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
Let me just pause here. This woman is lying out her ass. This woman is lying her ass off. Yes, Kamala, when you ran for president in 2020, you did say on the town hall that you would ban fracking. Video doesn't lie, boo. Then when you got pushback from corporate media and some of your pals in the Hillary Clinton circle, you retracted and you said, no, I'm not going to ban fracking. This woman is lying. They're both lying. Does everybody see this? Now she's going to pretend like she never said that. That is a freaking lie. Also, I'm getting really tired of hearing about your mom and saved up money for the house and middle class. None of that has anything to do with you changing your position on fracking, on Medicare for all, on multiple issues, because you were going with whatever was popular at that time to win. You don't have any real principles. You don't have any real, people pay attention to this. Who is Kamala Harris and what does she want? She goes with whatever is popular at that point in time. And right now, it is popular for her to go with the status quo. I can't believe this woman sit here and just blatantly lie as if we don't have video.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Ooh.
She went out.
Ooh.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important, in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get to.
environment, as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Everybody noticed that ABC has been fact checking Donald Trump, but they're not fact checking Kamala Harris. They definitely didn't fact check her about the fracking statement, right? She lied right there, and they didn't fact check her. Pay attention to that.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
Some of those people disappeared and have never been heard from again. Some of those people were pulled away in white vans during BLM protests. The real activists, not the ones that got paid, the real activists, some of those people disappeared and you never heard from them again. So if you feel that those people need to be prosecuted, which I disagree, But if you feel those people need to be prosecuted and you're wondering what happened to those people, I'm just telling you what happened to some of those people. The real BLM activists, some of those people were never seen or heard from again.
I'd ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation.
I'm sorry, but I saw video footage that showed officers letting them walk right in.
Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
What is the future, Kamala? Because Joe Biden has said some racial things as well. Joe Biden sat up there and told Charlemagne the God that if you got to think about whether or not you're going to vote for him or Donald Trump, that you're not black. So let's not pretend like the guy that you hanging out with, the guy that, you know, is your comrade, your ally and chief there. Let's not pretend like his hands are washed clean when it comes to racial issues either. So what is this path forward, Kamala? When you were supporting an apartheid state, you say, let's not go back, but you supporting Israel. You supporting an apartheid oppressive state. So the future with you don't look so great either.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
that.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have standing.
Fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
They laughing at you too, Kamala. Those world leaders, they're laughing at you too. They're not laughing to your face, but they're laughing at you too. Also, she's not answering the question. She still did not answer the question that they asked.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart, Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay with it because
your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more.
But he brought up a very solid point that a lot of us have said. She was selected. She did not run as a candidate in the 2024 Democrat race. That was Marianne Williamson. That was RFK until he left the Democratic Party and ran as an independent. That was Dean Phillips. These were the people that were running against Joe Biden in the 2024 Democrat primary. Kamala Harris was not on that ballot because she was not running. He's right about that. She was selected. And people need to start asking these questions. How in the hell she ran in 2020 and she didn't even make it through half of the debate because she was doing so terrible after Tulsi Gabbard knocked her out with just one damn punch. And now all of a sudden this person is the Democrat nominee. Nobody has questions about that. Nobody has a problem with the fact that nobody voted for Kamala Harris as the Democrat primary candidate. And she was just selected by Obama and the Clintons and Wall Street and the military industrial complex and the McCains and the Cheneys and these neocons. Nobody has a problem with that. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party trying to remove Jill Stein off the ballots because they know that Jill Stein actually has a real platform and Kamala Harris is a candidate in an empty suit. I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like Kamala Harris. But I'll say one damn thing. Donald Trump actually won the Republican nomination. Kamala Harris was just placed there.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran, and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
Having security means the Palestinian people would have to have an army, which Netanyahu said he would not allow them to have. This is why I push back on the two-state solution and say you need a one-state solution with equal rights for all. So to have security, if they had their own state, they would be required to have a military, which Israel does not want them to give. That's two shots, right, guys? Two shots. Drink when they say Israel defend itself. That's two. She's using the same AIPAC script. She acts like she's not a part of the current administration. We need to get a ceasefire. Honey, this war been going on since October 7th. If you really wanted to get something done, you would get it done. Okay? Miss me with all of that.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
So Kamala does not hate Israel. She is funded by AIPAC. She is funded by the Israeli lobby. Okay, so she does not hate Israel. It would not be gone if she is president. She'll do the same, taking the same type of duties towards Israeli policy as Joe Biden has. They are similar on that particular issue. So again, that's an that is ridiculous. That's an exaggeration. At the same time, he told you that Kamala Harris also hates the Arabic people too. So I don't know what's happening here, but if I were Donald Trump, if I was on that damn stage, I would have said, isn't this the same woman that wouldn't allow a Palestinian American to speak at the DNC? Isn't it the same woman that told the Palestinian American woman she couldn't speak at the DNC, even though her speech had already been, pre-read and it was vetted, but they let the Israeli family come up there and speak, but they wouldn't let the Palestinian American speak? I would have called that out. Couldn't have been me.
President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors.
Didn't Putin just say that he wanted Kamala Harris to win, that he preferred to have her as the president?
And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it. Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Let me pause it or just mute it for a second there. There's just a number of things that have been said that to me I find to be very disturbing. A number of lies. They don't seem to be correcting Kamala Harris's lies, but they are correcting, Donald Trump. So it's obvious here that there is some type of, bias that they have towards Kamala Harris. So again, I feel like they're not being completely fair. And then there's another issue that we need to bring up as well. I thought that the mics were supposed to be muted. So if the mics were muted when another person was speaking, how were they interrupting each other? So I don't know. Did I miss something? Did they change that or whatever? But I'm telling you guys, like, Jesus Christ, vote for Jill Stein. Like this is crazy. Like let's go to some of the super chats while we're waiting for them to come back. Thank you, Nasir. Sabby, thank you. Keep it real. Who would be a better president for brown folks? And please don't look ego much weight. She go much weight. She go. I don't know who she goes. Based on policy, that would be Jill. Based on policy and ballot access, that would be Jill Stein. She has an actual, Black agenda. She has an agenda for Indigenous people. Thank you, Raphael. You don't know what carbs are the most important things in your diet. Your brain only uses energy coming from carbs, not proteins, my sister. I have carbs before I work out, not after though. Thank you, Marvin. You think we'll talk about the deep state grip? No more wars, ? Thank you, Dry Fly, for the super sticker. Thanks, Lawn Guy. China has a 90% homeowner rate versus the US rate of 66%. It's true. Thank you, P. Smith. And you're a member for 12 months. Peon, the UK have to go elsewhere for dental care because of the wait. Canadians come here for hip/knee replacements. Well, it's not that they can't get those things done in Canada. I think that with a hip knee replacement, if it's not something that urgent, you may have to wait a little bit longer there. Eric, we can fast forward if need be, if you think, if we can scoot past. Oh, can we scoot past the commercials? I'll let you do it, Eric. I won't mess with it. Thank you, Savannah Dahl. Sabby, the California bill defined a new homeowner as not owning for 7 years, and parents can't have a home presently. However, I couldn't find Kamala's first generational buyer definition. Thank you for that. So thank you. Okay, let's bring them back in. Bum, bum, bum.
administration, that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
They threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up.
Where is Joe Biden? That is a good question. In the last video I saw of him, he said that he wasn't going to say anything because people would get mad at him because he'd say what's on his mind or whatever. And then he walked away from the camera. We're going to do a poll too towards the end to ask you guys, who do you think won this debate? But do you think that Trump is right there? Do you think that if Donald Trump would have won re-election, we wouldn't have this war with Ukraine? If yes, say yes in the chat. If you think he's lying, say no.
Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interests for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Uh-oh.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch?
No, he wouldn't eat him for lunch. I'm sorry. This is a big exaggeration here, Kamala. I feel like you're playing this up for the audience, for entertainment here. The reality is this: Ukraine is running out of soldiers. They're pulling men off the street to go fight. They're pulling people in their 40s off the street to go fight. They run out of men. Zelensky admitted this himself. So there's that. Two, Ukraine is not going to beat Russia. Let's stop kidding ourselves. Three, I think a lot of Americans want you guys to stop sending money to Ukraine. I feel like we're really taking care of this damn country, but we're not taking care of people in our country. So that is a fact. And people are tired of it. All of this could have been avoided. You guys couldn't even wait. You couldn't be in office for 2 years without starting and aiding and abetting another conflict. You couldn't let 2 years go by before you're like, let's let something pop off. So ending in Afghanistan, that means nothing. Because you're involved in 2 international conflicts under your first term. Congratulations, you're a neocon.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and now, please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan.
Once again, she didn't answer the question. So notice again how they didn't push back on her and say, but will you answer that question whether or not you had met with him? Notice how she didn't do that, right?
Stan, it came up in the first hour of this debate. I wanted to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying...
She says that this is a place that Americans, I guess, hold so dear. No, you mean presidents, because I've never been to Camp David. Have you ever been to Camp David? I don't think many of us have been to Camp David. So no, speak for yourself, boo. Most Americans have never been there. So that just is what it is. You skirted around the question again because he asked you, do you bear responsibility? And you never answered that question. You're like, well, I think Joe Biden made the right decision. Do you take responsibility? You know? So honey, this is a struggle.
That you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. The agreement was was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump.
Let me just jump in here for a second. One thing I forgot to mention is when Kamala said that we're not spending taxpayers are not spending money for the Afghanistan, war anymore. No, but we're spending money for Israel and Ukraine. So congratulations. You managed to get us into two conflicts or deal with two conflicts instead of the one. Let's continue.
Thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this.
Is that true? If the American people wanted better than that, then why did they vote for Donald Trump in 2016? Why did he beat Hillary Clinton? I mean, those things that she brought up happened before he won in 2016. So if that were the case, Kamala Harris, why did he win? And then 2, notice, we'll let her finish. Notice she still hasn't pushed back on the became black thing. Notice the way he says kind of funny. He was like, she became black, but she doesn't refute it. She doesn't deny it. She doesn't say, what black American do you know would not sit up here and say, that's ridiculous. Of course I'm a black American. Why isn't she owning that? Because she's not. People have to understand black American is an ethnic group. So I am a black American. My parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, yada, 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 down the line, we are all black Americans. We are American descendants of slavery. Kamala Harris is not a black American. She may be of the diaspora, but by definition, she is not black. The term black to describe people like black people, that originated here in the United States, and it applied to American descendants of slavery. So you don't go to Jamaica and hear Jamaicans saying we're black. They say we're Jamaican. Does everybody understand this? That is very important for people to get that through their heads. Now, Trump says it, it's kind of funny when he says it because he's kind of like, she became black. But if you look at other newspapers, when she was running for the Senate seat, they said she will be the first female Indian woman to win. They didn't say she would be the first Indian Jamaican woman to win either. They didn't mention the Jamaican part. They just said Indian woman. So the reality is Kamala Harris, by definition, is not a Black American. Does everybody understand that? Let me continue. Jesus.
Want someone who understands as I do. I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump.
So yeah, notice she did not tell you that she is Black. Have you guys noticed that? And nobody would even mention this, Kamala Harris, had the Democratic Party not ran you as a Black woman. That's what they pushed you as, said she could be the first Black woman this, first Black woman that. That's what they pushed you as, Kamala Harris, because you were an empty suit. Now, if you would have had like policies, if you would have been like on your game, they wouldn't have pushed you as that. But that's all they had to go with, because nobody voted for you in the 2024 Democrat primary because you weren't a part of it. They selected you. So they had to come up with, let's push the fact that, whoa, this could be the first Black woman, da, da, da. And you guys expect those of us that are Black Americans to sit back and believe this lie and to not speak up. And when we speak up about it and say, no, she's not, we're a problem. CNN want to point fingers at us and bring on a woman who's from Cuba. They want to bring her on and sit up there and tell another man that, well, no, she is Black. You look Black. You are Black. Now you got a Cuban woman who is white passing on CNN News trying to tell them if someone is Black because they look Black. She's just looking at the color of someone's skin. I've met a number of people throughout the diaspora, and a number of times they've been very quick to correct me and let me know that they are not Black. And they never give the voices to the people who are of that experience. They didn't bring on anybody that was a Black American to be a part of that panel discussion, to have that conversation. They brought on a Cuban woman who was white passing to tell you who is Black and who isn't because they look a certain way. It's a hot mess. We see exactly what's happening. No, you don't claim being Black when it's beneficial for you. Because all these other times, people are quick to tell you, I'm not Black, I'm Dominican. Correct yourself. They're quick to tell you these things. But now you want to claim it because it's beneficial. I ain't got time for it, boo. I don't have time for it.
This is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had. A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and And let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
Now she changed it again. First, it was the $25,000 down payment. Then it flipped to a $25,000 tax credit. Then on her website, it flipped to up to $25,000. And now it's back to $25,000 down payment. Which is it? The $6,000 that she was referring to, from what I read, that was a tax credit. Like all these tax credits, man. Like it's just, can't even give people a basic standard of living. It's just have a kid and you'll get this tax credit. Ay, ay, ay.
That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page.
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
She has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
you,
what
Mr.
her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump.
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I just
gonna
need to
move.
She does not have a plan to defund the police. Hell, she is the freaking police. So Trump, you need to let that one go. I don't know why you keep trying to go there, but you can't go there on that one.
Move on, Vice
One
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris,
Didn't John McCain fly back to D.C. to vote against that bill so that way people could have Obamacare protected? That was right before John McCain announced that he had cancer. Just checking.
2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice President Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move.
If the plan is that it should be a right, then we should have universal health care for everyone in this country, not expanding the Affordable Care Act if it's really about health care being a right.
To an issue that's important for a lot of...
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
I just want to add something here for people who are not aware. Unions are paid to endorse a candidate. So just FYI, Sean Fain of the UAW gave the endorsement originally actually to Joe Biden, but made it very clear that most of his workers are not going to vote for the Democratic Party. So just keep that in mind. It
didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you. All of you mofos are crooked and corrupt. I'm just keeping it real, okay? Both of you guys over here talking about climate and clean air and clean water and all this stuff under both of your administrations. Neither one of you fixed the dirty water problem in Flint. Neither one of you held the politicians accountable for what happened in Flint. Flint still has dirty water. We were just talking about this. In fact, Jordan Sheraton will be here Thursday to talk about that. Still has dirty water. Okay, Jackson, Mississippi has dirty water. Denmark, South Carolina has dirty water. So you guys talking about all this stuff, but under both administrations, and Kamala's still part of the Biden administration, none of you have fixed this issue. Kamala, you say that you're now no longer against, banning fracking, but you want to talk about clean energy and clean air and all this stuff. You know, fracking is a pollutant. It is an environmental issue. And it wrecks the communities, and it wrecks the most vulnerable communities. This includes indigenous populations. It includes poor white populations and Black people. Those are the people that are affected by these actions. And neither one of you really tackled that the way that it was supposed to be done.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Honey, I just can't. This is, let me see if I can just fast forward now, because I don't think they took. Oh, yeah. Let's fast forward because they're almost done. And then I think they're doing closing remarks. Let's do that. We're going to go to the closing remarks because this is just a mess, you guys. This is just a mess. No, random. Everyone is not affected. People in Beverly Hills are not affected. They don't have dirty water. People in rich communities don't have dirty water. So the reality is both of those administrations had a chance to get this done and to improve these issues, and they didn't. Now let's get to the closing statements.
Going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay?
No. Not even into the victims. Okay. Yeah, you say that to the victims, but when it came to the perpetrators, you were just looking to lock up black men. Get out of here.
And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
Ooh, honey, I know people are going to be talking about this debate for the next couple of days at least. We will clip certain parts of the debate to put out as clips for you, particularly the economy, immigration, Israel, and the discussion about race. We'll do at least 4 clips of this debate, so you can just go straight to those clips. And I like I'm having a Whoopi Goldberg from Ghost moment where I just want to say, Molly, you in danger, girl. Like, that's just how I feel right now. Like, I feel like we're just like, we're screwed regardless. Like, this is terrible. This is really bad. People need to start asking these questions. Donald Trump lost in 2020, beat Hillary in 2016. I showed you polls recently that showed that Donald Trump is now increasing support with Black voters, even though he lost in 2020. How does that happen unless this administration has been that bad? Right? Some of the economic policies from this administration, some of the international policies of this administration, the foreign policies, and I will show you this as well. I don't know if everybody saw this. Yeah, Eric, can we go to my Twitter page? I want to show everybody that new poll because you don't get here without like not having bad policy. And this doesn't mean everything that they did was bad, but they messed up on crucial issues where they definitely shouldn't have messed up, where they ignored the people, right? So I want to show you what just happened. This new poll that came out, and I told you there was a reason why they were coming after Jill Stein. But get a load of this. Holy smokes, fam. Jill Stein now leads Kamala with Muslim voters in 3 of the battleground states. Jill Stein leads outright in Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin. This has never happened in my lifetime before. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but this has never happened. This is what I'm saying. This administration has failed in the sense that they failed to listen to what the voters wanted, the people who put them there in office, whether it was failing on foreign policy, whether it was failing on immigration, whether it was failing on inflation, the economy. They have made mistakes in areas where you really just can't mess up. Now, Professor Alan Lichtman, who makes the presidential predictions, apparently he has never been wrong, he says, and he has predicted that Kamala Harris is going to win in November. I don't know. Maybe Alan will continue to be right, or maybe this could be the one time that Alan could be wrong. But I will say what I have been noticing from the polls, even though she's leading with what looks like the popular vote, and that's by very little, the swing states still do not look good for her. What it's showing is that her surge that she had has come to a halt, and Donald Trump is starting to increase in places where he wasn't increasing before against Kamala Harris. So I don't know. I'm seeing polls that show they're tied in North Carolina. They're saying North Carolina could be at play. Then I see another poll that says it's not at play. I don't know, but I will tell you this much. If there was ever a chance for you to vote against genocide, for you to vote for a pro-worker party that's on the ballot, Jill Stein is on the ballot in 48 states. Now is the time to do it. What I think we've seen from this debate, and we've seen from other interviews as well, is that both Kamala and Donald Trump really ain't got it all together. Really ain't got it all together. Kamala, in my opinion, I do not feel is prepared to be president of this country. And I think that she's mainly being propped up by the Obama-Clinton circle. I think they will be the ones making decisions in a Kamala Harris presidency, which means more wars. The neocons have all lined up for her, including Dick Cheney and all the rest of them. But this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. We've already had Donald Trump. We had him in 2016. And you're hearing Donald Trump say he's going to do all these things that he also could have done in 2016. You're hearing Kamala Harris say we're going to do all these things as if she's not a part of the current administration. And don't give me that, well, vice presidents can't do this. Vice presidents can. They do have a certain piece of power. She's been able to do other things while she's been sitting there. One thing remains clear. Both of them at the end of the day are pro-police. Both of them at the end of the day will give more money to the police. Both of them are pro-Israel and will continue to give weapons to Israel. And both of them are pro-Wall Street. It is time for a change in this country. I really think it's time for a change. We have to build a third party movement. We really got to move towards something else, because these two people, I don't know. It's like a crab in a bucket mentality. That's what it feels like to me. Like each one of them, each party, the Democratic Party, Republican Party, is like crabs in a bucket, and one crab trying to crawl on top of the other one to get its way out and leave the others there. I just can't. Now, I want to give a special shout out to Chandra. She is a co-host for Beauty and the Boomer. They do excellent work over there, her and Oz. Chandra has announced, she said, "This is the hardest battle I've ever faced. I'm fighting for my life against aggressive lung cancer, and I need your help. Please consider donating or sharing my story. Every bit counts." So please, we'll go to the GoFundMe here. I'll share the link. Please help out Chandra if you can. Her goal is $30,000. She's raised $7,435. Again, just I'm sorry, but this is another thing that I have to say about the healthcare system that we have in this country. Now, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris want to talk about Obamacare and all that jazz. But the reality is, why do people have to create a GoFundMe for healthcare? Because we don't have a healthcare system for everybody in this country. It's a damn shame. We're sending all this money to Ukraine. We're sending all this money to Israel, but we're not taking care of the health of our own people. And that is a problem. And I don't care what side of the political spectrum you are on. That is a problem, that we are not taking care of our people. And Chandra's not the only one. I've seen multiple GoFundMes throughout the years for people that need help to pay for medical expenses. And I'm sorry, Kamala, lowering the price of insulin is not just going to cut it, okay? When people need surgeries, when people need serious help, that is not going to cut it. Let me make sure I put the link in there. I think I accidentally put a paragraph. Okay, there we go. Yeah, there you go. There's the link to it. This is a mess. So I don't want to hear about let's do what we can to help Ukraine. I want to hear about what we're going to do to help people right here. I don't want to hear about it. So please help Chandra if you can, guys. I put the GoFundMe link there in the chat. We got to do a poll. Right? So let's do a poll to see who won the debate. Give me just a second here. Almost forgot to do it. I said I was going to do a poll and almost forgot, but I can just do it real quick. Who do you think won the debate, ladies and gentlemen? Think about this. And I think I should put an option that says no one. You think I can do that? You guys think I should do an option that just says no one? I can do that. Let's see. I don't know, Eric, did anybody in the chat say to use the option that says no one? I can't see it right now because I'm doing this thing. Okay, poll the people. Start the poll.
Yeah, you got some people saying nobody. You got a lot of people saying Jill Stein.
Okay, so I know I can do this then. Great. I'll put 4 choices.
Just make sure when we get the Zoom room link that we don't overwrite the poll.
Okay, so I'll wait till we get the. Okay, thank you for reminding me.
If you want, you can just put that. If you want, you can just put that link in our Etherpad notes for the Zoom room.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll do that then. Okay, so Eric, I'm going to take a quick, guys. We are going to do call in. I know it's late, but we are going to do it. I figure people do want to talk about this. But I'm making sure I'm looking at this right. Eric, we have, I think, a lot of super chats to go through. I'm going to take a quick break. Yeah, I'll take a quick break. I'm going to come back and then we're going to head on over to do the call in. So you can call in after the show and have discussion. It's pretty cool. The poll is there. Go ahead and answer it, guys. Right now I see it's 456 votes. So if you click on the live chat, you'll see there's a poll there now. So go ahead and answer that and I'll be back. Don't forget the super chats, Eric. You're muted, Eric.
Thank you. All right. This is part of the show where we give Sabrina a little break and I come on, hopefully not muted. Eric T. Red come in from the background to the foreground and read some chats. And I think we got a lot of chats. Yeah, we had a big audience tonight. I mean, between the YouTube numbers and what Twitter said was there for views, we hit like 12K, which is pretty wild. So we got people out there. But yeah, we're going to be transitioning over shortly to the Zoom Hangout, formerly known as Call-In. Encourage all of you to come in and check that out. We'll be giving you the link. Sabby's actually making the room now. And yeah, we have good combos over there. Cameras are optional, whether or not you want to have a camera on, but you can come in, you raise your hand, you can say your bit. And or you can just listen in to the good conversation. All right, ton of super chats. Let's see what we got in the queue. Thanks, Kime. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce that too well, but thanks for the super chat, saying for the hustle crew for Palestine. All right, thanks for that one. Thanks for the super chat, Dwayne, who we may see in the Zoom hangout. Sorry, we can't have universal health care. Queen Hillary forbids it. Thanks for that, Dwayne. And thanks for the super chat, David. Dirty water is a problem in so many places. I have friends in Plainville who recently went through it. This falls under failing infrastructure for me. Thanks for that one, David. A good point. I did it again. I left it on mute. All right. Thanks, Corey. Corey, what was the last one I read? All right. So, yeah, we had David saying dirty water is a problem in so many places. I have friends in Plainville who recently went through it. This falls under failing infrastructure. And we had Mullion saying that they both support Trump. Thanks for those. And thanks for the super chat, Dwayne, also, who says Kamala has a blue agenda, as in cops, and neo-lib Democrats, not a black agenda. He's Hillary with a tan. And thanks from the Traveler. Putin endorsed Kamala a few days ago. Why does that not get talked about in corporate media? Well, I mean, I'm not even sure about exactly what Putin said, but I think, one answer to the whole Putin endorsing thing is like, why do we really care? I mean, this is, last time I checked, this is the United States. So, what Putin wants really isn't, I don't see why that's even relevant. It really should be more the answer. And thanks for this one, Baby Ethernet. Sabby is doing an amazing job discussing policy, setting the stage for the debate. You are the future of independent media. Excited for your channel. Thanks for that one. And thanks for the super chat, Salim, who says, if the only candidate set to win is a genocidal maniac, what is the point of voting at all? Well, I mean, what a lot of us, out here in the real left will say is, if you don't want to waste your vote, then vote for peace, vote for the person who's not a genocidal maniac, and that's one of several third-party candidates. And, we tend to say, vote Jill Stein because she has the ballot access and has the best chance of really shaking things up and has an awesome platform. Thanks for this one, Cup of Joy, who says, will you be showing Jill's response side by side with the uniparty undemocratic debate? Yeah, we're going to try. It's a little hard with time constraints and technically in all this, but we'll try to get into Jill's responses as well. And I know Jill's been on Twitter live tweeting it, and she definitely has her responses, which are really good. Thanks for the super sticker, James Starks. Thanks for this super chat, Nexus Games, who says that $6,000 a year tax break will be means tested. Gotcha. Yep. And thanks for this, Baby Ethernet. What about opportunities for the working class? And thanks for None of Your Business, who says, for those who think voting is a waste of time, then don't waste your time. Instead, vote for Jill and we can get real change. Yes. And thanks for the super chat, Frank Johnson, who says she done lost. We'll see how that poll goes and where that poll comes in. Roger's asking, is she on Xanax? And Girly Blessed, thanks for the super chat. Who says, how do we end up with the fascism clown timeline? I feel you, Girly Blessed. And Joey Peltier, who's been a member for 14 months, sent in the special super chat. Biden gave a bunch of quote unquote green subsidies to make those chips here, Inflation Reduction Act, and used on executive order to bypass an EPA to tap mines in tribal lands. Thanks for that. And thanks for the super sticker. I guess his name is the message, right? Whose name is, who goes by the name Harris is the worst ever. And we got a special message from Swampo Possum, who's been a member for 7 months. It's a myth peddled by evangelicals. My boss came to work freaking out about babies being killed at 9 months. These people will believe anything. Yeah, I mean, you know, you get these stories out there and they're just not real. Right? And we heard both Trump and Kamala just pulling stuff out of their you-know-whats about, you know, making claims. Thanks for the super chat, Bran. Girl, none of this addresses the question. Will you keep the same immigration policy as Biden? Yeah, earlier on, I think kind of reacting to how at that moment, Kamala wasn't answering the question, but of course, you know, Kamala and Trump both would just tend to barrel ahead and not even answer the questions that were given. But, you know, that's how the uniparty politicians are. And thanks for this, Susan J, been a member for 22 months. Cool. And her message was, Kamala is making the same faces she did in 2015 when we Bernie supporters wanted him to speak at the California Democratic Convention. She had the same disdain for us. Yeah, and I feel you. And that's also kind of the, you know, it's an interesting question, like how will that play? That kind of disdain, maybe girl bossy type of looking she was trying to do. I noticed also that like he didn't look at her like the whole time. He would be just staring ahead, almost ignoring her, and she was like constantly giving him looks. And you know, it's hard to know how well each thing played out. Thanks for this one, Nexus Games. The pet eating may be somewhat true. Google Ohio Attorney General launches investigation amid wild claims of eating pets and reckless driving. Thanks for the super sticker, Falling Up. Appreciate that. And thanks also for this message, Girly Blessed. Greatly Blessed. Oh, I should be reading that right. Well, great. Yeah, Greatly Blessed. Thanks for the super chat. Quote, I have the endorsement of over 200 Republicans, end quote. And thanks for the super chat, Nexus Games, who says, Kamala is shul. And thanks for this one, Million Flower, who says, Zenib Day, thanks for Malcolm explaining the eating pets insanity, how they said the same thing for Irish. And thanks for the super chat, Nexus Games, who says Trump is destroying her. She is clearly rattled. Yeah, and we can talk about this a lot in the Zoom hangout as well. How people felt this thing went down. And thanks for this super chat. Harris is the worst ever. This time has the message. Biden's economical team, former BlackRock CEO. Yeah, I mean, you know, let's face it, no matter which uniparty candidate wins, I mean, our government is still being run by the billionaires and the bankers and the military industrial complex. And, you know, the real job here is to break out of that. Thanks for this super chat. All One Same says, go Sabby. And thanks for this one, Grapeseed. Why didn't he pull up the videos eating pets? I don't know. And thanks for the super chat from Apartment 2D. World leaders, he says, world leaders are laughing at the U.S. Neither one has policies or values. Can't argue with that. And one thing that just always occurs to me is just how much Putin just must laugh at everything we do. You know, regardless of how you feel about Putin or Ukraine or all this stuff, I just see him just laughing his ass off at us. But all right, we're getting through them. Thanks for this one, Inspired Truth Broadcast, for the super sticker. And thanks, Tamisha, who says, I can't stand this woman. Sabby, I can't. I'll have to make sure we read that one the right way. She's talking about Kamala, obviously. Thanks for this one, Swampo Possum. My mom's name is Tara. What'd she do to you? And thanks for the super sticker, Erasing a Nation. And thanks for the super chat, greatly blessed. I'm just waiting for one of them to actually answer the questions. Well, you'll be waiting a long time. And thanks, Jay Tolbert, who says, hi, Sabby, will you be covering the Jill debate rebuttal?
I'll probably have to do
Sabby.
it.
I did that
Huh?
a minute ago.
I'm not muted.
Oh, wait, no, that's me. Sorry.
Oh, I was like, I'll probably have to do it. I'll probably have to do that another day because we're going to jump into the call in just a second. But I definitely do want to cover that.
Wait, I got to get in my headphones. This thing's going to be trouble.
I can take.
Now I can hear you. Sorry, I couldn't hear. All right. You want to take it?
Yeah, I can take it from here. Where are we? The high Sabby one. Thank you, Grapeseed. Putin moved the minute he heard she was in office. Thank you for that. Thank you, All's One Same. No fact checking on Kamala. Yeah, they weren't doing that. Thank you for this one. Stein debate rebuttal on Green Party website or YouTube. You check YouTube, Jill Stein YouTube. She should be on there doing a rebuttal now. Thank you, Crown Heights. That's absolutely not true. Sabby, black is not a term specific only to Americans. Sorry. Yes, it is. I know what I'm talking about. Moving on. Thank you, Mr. Old Man. I am interested in why they didn't bring up the migrant gangs or tangible or reparations unless I missed it. They did bring up the migrant gangs. They did not talk about reparations, of course. Thank you, Baby Ethernet. Kamala's intense body language is just for memes. Thanks, Andre. I agree with a few others in the chat. You are right on ethnicity, but not on race. But I agree she is not ADOS. She's not a Black American. Thank you, Salt and Pepper Natural. In Jamaica, they would call her a coolie. Thanks, Tamisha. I work in social services and most non-Blacks identify as white, period. Thank you for that. Thanks, C. Wilson. Sabby, I heard your Dutch oven pot had a bathtub ring. Thank you, Yusaki. More debts and loans to consume. That's a good. Thanks, Frank. What is this democracy she keeps talking about? We don't have a democracy. Thanks, Crown. The Affordable Care Act is abysmal. It requires high premiums with even higher copays. You're better off paying out of pocket as needed. Universal health care is better. Yeah, I had a friend who tried that out, like did the Obamacare for like a year, I think. And he was just like, no, it's too expensive. Thank you, Salim. Who do you think won the debate and why? Honestly, I think I'm going to say between those two, I think Trump won the debate. Overall, I say Jill Stein won the debate. Thank you, Regina, for the super sticker. Thanks, it. Local city water pollution is not the responsibility of the federal government, but of the state government. But remember, they brought Obama into Flint because the state government wasn't acting. Thank you for this as well, Crown. Kamala Harris is a vapid candidate. She supports Israel that targets doctors and nurses in Gaza trying to save lives. Trump is no different. As a healthcare provider, I say neither. Jill Stein, 2024. Thanks, Nicole. She took the Freeman's Bank to help other groups. Yes, she did. Thank you, Demaster. Abortion equals stem cell stockpile. I don't know about that. Thank you, Mama. Sorry, I said MoMA. Milwaukee still has lead water and lead paint all throughout our historically redlined ghettos. Had to post it because everybody forgot about us. Thank you for that, Mama. I want to say MoMA for some reason. K1, the debate clearly shows us why we desperately need to move beyond the two-party duology. That's what I feel. Jonathan, thanks. Sabby, I live in Chicago and this migrant crisis is out of control. I believe Donald Trump has more than 20% of the Black vote, way more. Interesting. Thanks, Dan. We'll like Sabby to provide Zelle payment to our audience before it's too late, just like our lovely Candace Owen was demonetized today. Hope Kim Iverson follows. Zelle payment. I have to look into that. And thank you, Roger. Put your website for Zoom so I can share. Let me add the Zoom link. I will put that in the private chat for you, Eric, so you can add it to the or however you wanted me to do this. You can add it to the what you call it. Oh no, you told me put it on the Ethernet pad. Okay, here we go. I'll put it here. While I'm doing this, Eric, can we bring up the poll results for the debate? And I'll put the passcode here.
Actually, first, make sure I'm audible. Actually, first I'll read Roger's chat on Rockfin.
Okay.
Thanks for the tip comment on Rockfin, Roger. Roger on Rockfin says, surprise, surprise, it's Comms PJs. Do you get that? It's Comms PJs 2025? I don't know.
Kamala.
Well, what's PJs?
I don't know.
Okay. Where's our 2K checks? Roger will explain it in the Zoom hangout. Where's our 2K checks regarding Israel? If Jill doesn't win, then it'll be up to us to take the protest to the next level. Get out the streets and into the courtrooms. If Israel is your number one priority, then let's start filing charges with our U.S. attorney in our state and DOJ against our senators, House of Representatives for violating the Leahy Act. Sabs, can you show them what it says? And then Roger also, thanks for this one. Sab, I know you like to play 270 to win, but the Senate matters even more. No filibuster, nothing passing. 270 to win has a Senate tab you can play around with. That one in Governor's tab also. Kamala never answered the first question. Are we better off today than we were 4 years ago? Kamala isn't going to codify, you know what? First, Dems must win the Senate and then overcome a legislative filibuster. 270 to win Senate tab, Sabby. All right, we've got that. And is it time to look at that poll? Let's look at that poll.
Yeah, let's look at the poll.
That should be this one. With 1,348 votes. I'm going to let you talk about the.
Oh boy, who won the debate? 8% of you said, "Damn, Kamala, it's not looking good for you, honey." I'm pretty sure liberal media, though, they're gonna take up for you. 8% said Kamala, 33% said Trump, 26% said Jill Stein, and 33% said no one. Interesting. 1,361 votes there. Thank you guys so much for that. I'm gonna make sure I put the link to join the Zoom in the chat, in the Chizat. Okay. Let me put that here. Okay. I just got to change the thing.
All right. And we also have it in sabbysabs2.com. Let me make a banner for that.
And okay, that's that. Let me pin that there, and I'm going to put the passcode up here on the screen. Let's see if they allow you to get in without the passcode, but I'll put it here as well. 3 banner. All right, here's the passcode 163191. I am going to, the link is pinned to the top of the live chat. So that poll has been replaced. Let me go ahead and open up the Zoom room to make sure people can get in. What? All right, we'll see how this goes. And then also, Eric has.
And you can also get in, yes, by going to sabbysabs2.com.
Yeah, you can get the link and everything there. So we should be good to go.
We'll get you in one way or another.
Yeah. And when you come into the Zoom room, for those of you who are new, I mean, most people know how to do this, but that have joined, if you want to speak, at the very bottom of the Zoom where it says reactions, just click on reactions and then select raise your hand. That way I know who wants to speak. And then we just need everybody to mute when they come in. And Eric, I'll go ahead and make you when you get in here, I'll make you a co-host so you can mute the people. There we go. All right, guys, we are going to head on over to there. Eric, you'll have to raise your hand so I can find you.
All right, I am launching the meeting now.
Based. All right.
Yeah, so Jill Stein, she had some she had a lot of live tweeting too. We can talk about that in the Zoom hangout as well.
Did we get all the chats?
Oh yeah, I think we had some late ones come in. If you want to check those.
Thank you, Long Guy. I can't believe Kamala attacks Trump's for crimes and democracy attack, but brags about support from Bush. And we can't say that on here, by the way, but I know what you mean. And Cheney war crimes. Thank you for this one. Cheney Bush killed 1 million and stole billions from Halliburton. Okay, let me make Eric a co-host. Okay, Eric, can you start muting people? And thank you for the super sticker, Aaron Bear. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, I hope it has been an eventful night for you. It seems like the room is pretty full over here, or it's filling up pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and head over to the after show so we can talk to each other one-on-one. Hey. So I will see you guys there. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for hanging out with me tonight. Again, if you can help Chandra, don't forget, I put that GoFundMe link there. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.